Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, did the governor launch a sneak attack? Also, the V-Team takes a look at codifying corruption. And Speaker Mike Hubbard says the laws he passed are unconstitutional. What is he, desperate, diabolical, or just plain daffy?
It's mine, you understand? Mine, all mine! Get back in there! Down, down, down! Go, go, go! Mine, mine, mine!
All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics, with your host, Bill Brett, and the V-Team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Hi, good morning. Good to be back with y'all.
It is great to have you back. Looked like you had a good time.
Yes, we did. Nice little vacation with the 3 children.
Well, it has been eventful. You're probably happy that you were not here. Lots of stuff going on.
No, I get all the texts. I read all the daily clips, even when I'm away.
The Porch Creek Indians started a massive ad buy, reportedly $1.4 million in advertising purchased to get across the message that they want to give the state $250 million. We asked this week, is this kind of like a bribe? Baron, what's your take on it?
Yes. I mean, they want something in return for their money. We're going to give the state $250 million, but we want a 100% Indian-controlled monopoly on gambling in the state of Alabama. And that's, by any definition, it looks like a quid pro quo agreement.
I would say it's egregious. I mean, you know, I don't know. I think a lot of people have done some polling. I mean, I don't believe that the citizens of the state of Alabama want one entity having a monopoly over gaming. I think they would like to have the opportunity to vote for it. And this just is wrong.
Well, you know, Susan, several people brought up to me that Don Siegelman and Richard Scrushy had a little deal just for $500,000, and it ended up putting both of them in prison.
It didn't go very well for them. I don't think this is maybe the same situation exactly. And my understanding of this is it's a loan anyway. This is they're going to give it up front and get it on the back end out of their taxes anyway.
Well, Claire, this past week, Governor Bentley came out and told AL.com that this was a dishonest offer, and he wished that the Porch Creek would quit running those ads.
Well, I think it probably is a dishonest offer. I mean, the whole thing is just squirrely. I don't know how you can take money as a state from a private entity and then back it out like this is some economic development package and we're going to give you tax incentives on the end. That does not work that way. Baron,
what are you hearing out of the State House?
Well, I'm hearing that at least on the 5th floor in the House of Representatives, they're starting to this infiltration, I guess, of information making its way through the ranks, that what they want to pass, what Mike Hubbard and the leadership team wants to pass, is a lottery with the Indian gaming monopoly attached to it. They don't want to include the 4 other casinos and go that route at all. They want the Indians and the lottery. And the selling point, what they're telling their folks to be able to go back home and sell it to their constituents is, this is a way to limit gambling. That we're not able to, as Alabamians, prohibit the Indians from gaming, but this will limit gaming to just what we have now and not allow it to expand ever in the future.
Well, wait a minute. As I just read, you know, earlier this week, I think, maybe it was on Thursday this week, that the Indians are now building this huge facility down in Foley.
The blue-collar deal.
They're exposing the Bubba blue-collar deal, expanding before we even come back into session. So that is increasing gaming right underneath their nose.
Part of their plan is if they get this monopoly, they are going to build more casinos. Right. It's not going to limit gambling. Right. That's a lie. Well, what it's going to do is allow them to expand gambling. Isn't that what we hear, Susan?
That's what we hear. And as long as they've got the land to do it with, we can't stop them anyway.
Well, where in Alabama can't you declare it Creek land? I mean, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have our own portion down there, but really most of Alabama was Creek territory at one time.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, this, if Hubbard's behind it, which we hear, it's got to be bad.
It's fishy.
I mean, it
doesn't smell good if he's behind it.
Somebody said to me the other day, they said, we got a governor who's the last person who sees him, that's the decision he makes. And we got a Speaker of the House, the last person to pay him. That's the kind of decisions he makes. It's terrible. And speaking of that, Claire, I'm sure you saw where Representative Craig Ford came out and said that Governor Bentley passing a special session, he characterized it as a sneak attack. And Craig said, you shouldn't sneak attack your legislatures. You should try to cooperate with them. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, I think I don't know. I'm going to pass the buck to that because, I mean, I just think that he did do that. He didn't talk to the leadership. He probably should have, but the outcome probably would have been the same. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think you kind of hit it on the head, even though you wanted to pass it. He shouldn't have done it.
Right.
You don't conspire against the legislature. You need to pass your package. I mean, he's proposing tax increases, but then he wants to drop an element of surprise on the very people he's asking to pass his thing. You sneak attack on an enemy, not a fellow combatant fighting for the same cause.
I mean, Susan, you've talked to a lot of these guys recently. I mean, there's just a lot of unhappiness with how the governor's acting, isn't there?
There's a great deal of unhappiness, and what a lot of people don't realize is they have to get this special session done within a 30-day window. So when they go into special session, it's going to be all out chaos if they try to get anything passed, which I think probably what they're going to do is go ahead and kind of let this session slide and go into another special session.
They only really have like 9 days, right, Barron?
Look, let me predict. I don't like to be in the prediction business. They're not going to pass a budget during this next 9-day special session.
No, they're not. I agree.
Between August 3rd and July 12th, or September 12th, or August 12th, rather.
August 11th.
And it's the governor's fault. I'm sorry. I hate to put the blame on him, but it's his fault. They kept saying they're not ready. It's their fault for not being ready. But if they're telling you they're not ready, wait on them to get ready and then call it.
Well, the whole thing is a mess. And unfortunately, this costs the state and the taxpayers more money every time they call a special session. I think you're right. When they come back in on the 3rd and they have to end on the 11th of August, they may get a few things done, but they're not going to get to the end of this. And they're going to have to come back in for another special session. Will they do that in August? I guess, or maybe September, because, I mean, October is coming around the corner for the new fiscal year.
Yeah.
And what I see is particularly a lot of the Democrats and Republicans that are just not in leadership. They said there's no plan. They don't know what's going on.
Right. Claire, this week, we were talking earlier, and this week the Alabama Jobs Foundation, who is headed by Coach Pat Dye, they're pushing for Marsh's plan to be accepted. They added 2 new members. You know those folks.
Right, two CEOs and very folks, Harold Rips and then Mr. Frank Barnberger out of Birmingham, so 2 well-known CEOs in the Birmingham community. And I think that they have deep pockets and can help out. And, they're doing it just because I think they care about the state. They do a lot of business in the state. Susan,
some people are saying, hey, the foundation isn't out there running ads like the Porch Creek, but they don't really need to, do they?
Not at this point, they don't. Polling showing that what the Porch Creek are running right now is actually working against them. So if they can kind of keep their powder dry and get closer to the, these legislators when they get in session, I think that's what they're headed. Especially if they do get it passed, they're going to want to spend their money on the CA.
Yeah, save their money for when they really need it. Because, y'all probably look on Facebook and social media. I've seen a lot of legislators out there, even in the Democratic Party and Republican Party, bashing what the Indians are doing in their ads.
Well, we're going to have the last word be yours, Claire. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
Sadly, this happens too often in families with autistic children.
First nightmare, their child wanders off, disappears, and is nowhere to be found.
Where her body was found just a couple hours ago.
An autistic boy wanders away from home and dies.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Senator Dirksen.
Well, it's good to be here, Bill.
Good to have
It's
you,
good to
Jack.
see you this morning.
He's the only guy that has a gruffer voice than yours, and he's dead.
Let's don't talk about the dead now.
No, there's enough of them.
They outnumber us.
Yeah, they do. Always will, too. You know, that's just the way it is. Senator Paul Busman, Republican from Coleman, has dared to do what a lot of people are afraid to do. He's basically touched the third rail of Alabama politics. He is suggesting that he has a plan to combine the general fund budget, the education trust fund budget, and still be able to protect education. Claire, you know Senator Busman. He's really passionate about this.
I do. I respect Senator Busman. I think he's a great senator, and I think, you know, kudos to him that he steps out there and at least tries to come up with a plan, okay? You know, he's about business. I mean, this is not new to try to combine the budgets. Many states do combine budgets. We're one of a few that don't do this. But you're right, it's been a holy grail in Alabama, don't touch it. But I think it's interesting, at least he's come out with this plan, which maybe you disagree with me on this and him, that you at least cap the education budget at what, 53%?
At least 53% of all funds go to education.
Right. Okay. And that's kind of been the case. But then it's interesting he capped some of these other things in the general fund, like corrections or prisons and Medicaid at, you know, in the, I don't know, 5%, 15%. It'll be interesting to see how that would really pan out.
Well, he wants to put it on the table, Bear, and I know there's, like any bill, there's always some questions.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect and admiration for Senator Busman. He's fought fights that very few other people are willing to fight. He's been able to hold up bad legislation basically by himself in several instances. But I think this is not good. I'm not a fan of this. I don't think you can go around capping prisons and Medicaid expenditures and get away with it. I don't like capping the education expenditures because right now, what he's saying is there's a whole bunch of junk in the education budget. Right. Well, that's true.
Right.
But what he wants to do is pull out all that junk and pull all the money along with it. Why don't we pull out the junk and invest the money into education the way it was intended to before you guys went around that intent and crammed a bunch of junk in there, like the Department of Commerce and all these other agencies that are stuffed in there. So I don't like the plan, but it is a plan, and kudos for trying to think outside the box a little bit, but you can't go around capping prisons and Medicaid.
Do you think the AEA has any chance of stopping that if the Republicans decide to do this? I mean, is there any gravitas over there?
I'm not sure there is anymore.
I'm not. I mean,
they certainly were very quiet last session, and I'm just not sure anybody knows who's steering that ship for sure. And I think when they're just a little off kilter right now, but you know, there are enough teachers that they'll come back in due time. Maybe not with the same influence, but I kind of like Busman's plan because whatever we're doing right now isn't working.
That's right.
And I'm all for trying something new.
Well, just like what you said, at least he has brought a plan to the table. What he's laid out right now will not be the finished product, but at least this should put them in the position to start negotiating and maybe seriously looking at this.
Well, to me, if you look at education money, what education truly has got, not all the pork stuff, but the true education budget, over the last 9 years, it hasn't been above 53%. I mean, it's always been below 53% of 4 of the last 9 years. 1 year it was 53%, the other years it was 51, 52. So this puts say, here's a minimum. Now,
that's a safe net, because that's what they've had. It's a safe net.
I mean, I've had educators say this is not going to happen, this is dangerous. I don't think it's dangerous. I think it's, we're not going to be able to keep 2 budgets forever. Not going to happen.
I don't know that we'll be able to keep 2 budgets forever, but if you're going to combine the budgets, don't cap education expenditures, because there are times when times call for salary increases, for example. Educators haven't gotten a salary increase since 2007. And I know a lot of people say, well, a lot of people in the private sector haven't either. But a lot of people in the private sector have. I mean, not everybody's out there starving to death. There are some people who are succeeding and making, far more than they were making back in 2007.
Our teachers are falling behind because they can't keep up with inflation.
And the danger with that is they start fleeing the state for better ground.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, we think the world of our educators. I think education is one of the reasons we have poor education is one of the reasons we tolerate public corruption the way we do. It's just a proven fact. The more educated a population is, the wealthier they are, the less they tolerate public corruption. To me,
We've
that
been
kind of
tolerating
explains
it for a long time,
Yeah,
public
we're gonna
corruption
keep
in
tolerating
Alabama.
it some more. One of the hot buttons, who knew? It's been going on for over a month now, is still a battle over the Confederate flag, and now it's a battle over Confederate monuments. And we've seen this with Lynn Park in Birmingham. They're wanting to move monuments. They're threatening to move monuments. People are really outraged, but Senator Allen has come out and said that he wants a bill that will protect all monuments. What do you think about that, Jack?
I'm supportive of that. I think that taking the flag down was a big symbolic gesture, and I think Bentley did it to avoid any kind of crisis we might have in Alabama as a blowback from what happened in South Carolina. However, and that's fine, I don't think we ought to tinker with anything that memorializes the dead, okay? Those monuments were erected to people who were heroes for whatever reason on both sides of the civil rights issue. Let's not tinker with it. Let's leave it alone. We moved the flags originally off the top of the Capitol. That wasn't enough. Okay, so we make another concession. We, meaning, people that grew up in the South, whatever. Now they're talking about removing flags all over the place, which Bentley did. Let's leave the monuments alone.
I agree with you on that. I mean, I think it is egregious. I mean, you start going to every town in the southeast region and pulling up Confederate monuments and going to high schools that have got a Jeff Davis High School or a Robert E. Lee High School, which there's plenty in Alabama and there are plenty in other states. I mean, it's outrageous. I mean, this is part of history. It's part of our heritage. They've moved the flag, but enough is enough. And the fact that Congress would vote to pull these down from the national parks, I think, is outrageous.
Well, Barron, we got about 1 minute. What was the deal with Martha Roby? What was that flap all about?
I don't know. Martha Roby sort of injected herself when she wasn't asked into this thing and said, well, they should be removed from Alabama's capital, I guess, and put in an historic context at some sort of historic marker. I know Martha doesn't basically live here anymore, but if she'd have driven by the Capitol, she'd have seen they were at a memorial. They were not on top of the Capitol.
Right.
They weren't stuck out in the middle of the lawn. You couldn't even see them from the street. You had to basically go either in the governor's office and look at them or walk up the driveway and look at them.
Well, I guess that's what Martha gets for being voted one of the sexiest people in Congress.
Well, think about it, y'all. Step aside. We have the little White House of the Confederacy. It was here in Montgomery, Alabama, before it moved to Richmond, Virginia. So, I mean, there is a lot of history here.
Well, once again, Claire gets the last
sorry.
word.
Imagine that.
I just thought that was important to point out.
We'll be right back.
We find that egregious.
Now they know what we feel like every day.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. I spoke with Senator Arthur Orr recently about this law that they passed during the 2015 session that actually codifies an attorney general's opinion that said that a public official could use excess campaign funds for his legal defense if they were related to his office. Now, the legislature, led by the Republican supermajority, has codified that, expanded it all out of proportion, and made what people were doing illegally now legal. Barron, you're a lawyer. Help me understand.
Well, for one thing is the Attorney General's opinion does not have the force and effect of law.
Right.
So you can't rely on it and say, well, that's the law. You can say this is what the Attorney General thinks the courts might do. Keep in mind that was 3 Attorney Generals ago. That was, I think, 8 of the 9 Supreme Court justices ago. But that's neither here nor there. What you were allowed to do before, you could take excess campaign funds after an election and use them for a legal defense after you were indicted, if the indictment was related to your office. Now what they've done is they've gone through and codified basically what Mike Hubbard was doing. During the investigation phase, long before you're indicted, anything reasonably related to your office. So you would have a hard time arguing that what Mike Hubbard was doing was related to his office. Otherwise, it would have definitely been illegal because he's being accused basically of lobbying.
Right.
So, I mean, they pulled a rabbit out of the hat. I have no idea why Arthur Orr got involved in this. I've not seen a satisfying explanation from anybody why he was involved in this.
What were you going to say, Jack?
I just don't understand why Arthur would care about this.
Well, I don't understand why he would put himself in that position of passing a bill like that, because let's explain this for the viewers, or you tell me. So what they passed this May now says what Mike Hubbard was doing is okay. But for the record, what he has been doing for the last, 18 months has been illegal, correct?
Well,
the way I read the law.
way I read the law,
because he had
absolutely.
not been indicted.
Right, right.
Okay, because I remember Attorney General Bill Pryor did something like, or gave an opinion like that for, I think, the sheriff in Jefferson County.
Exactly. Well, and here's one thing that nobody's thought about yet. I've not read this anywhere. Even if they pass this law, which they did, and even if people use this in the future, which they probably will, it does not affect your tax liability under federal law. If you still do this, to me, you're still committing a federal violation. You're violating federal law. And the feds could come after you under the IRS. I mean, the IRS could come after you and say, you have tax liabilities. You're using your campaign funds for your own personal gain.
Well, you know, the crazy...
Very interesting point.
The crazy thing is when I talked to the Law Institute and asked them about this law, because Arthur said they basically handled writing it up. They said, look...
Don't you think because they were asked to do this?
Yeah, I think they were asked to do it.
For the record.
You know, they said, look, the only way you can hold somebody guilty of doing this illegally, you know, I said, look, okay, so somebody comes to my office and they're complaining about a law I passed and I kill them. Well, that's reasonably related to my office. They were complaining about a bill. They were in my office. And they said, well, I guess you could use it. Now, if you're found guilty, the state could turn around and criminally indict you for using your campaign money improperly. And I said, so what you're saying is nobody will ever be prosecuted for this?
Right. Well, again, the feds can.
Right.
And I think the feds could even come in. You could challenge the law in federal court and say, you can't pass a law that makes a federal crime legal in Alabama.
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
We tend to do stuff like that all the time.
I didn't mean to interrupt, Jack.
No.
Well, so when Mike Ball made that ridiculous statement, what was it he said at a speech about we're going to look at changing these laws?
Yeah. Well, they're doing it.
But I mean, this is the most self-preserving bunch that we've had in a long time in Alabama. Make the Democrats look like strict folks.
Well, that's the
Well,
thing.
Mike Ball probably did that because he was told to do that.
Mike,
okay.
Somebody the other day asked me why Mike Ball did what was Hubbard giving Mike Ball to do his dirty work for him. I said, a pat on the head. That's about it.
I don't know. They're about equal in height, aren't they?
Well, he reach up a little bit and rub that bald spot. You know, I guess. I don't know. Mike's all right. He's a pander bear.
Yeah.
You know, they all do it. But you know, you bring up a good point. This past week, Mike Hubbard's criminal defense attorney, J. Mark White, filed a motion saying they need more time because Hubbard is thinking about challenging the constitutionality of the ethics laws that he helped pass, that he was convicted or indicted under. Jack, he wants to make his own laws unconstitutional.
Does this surprise you?
I mean, he
after
and
all
Governor
we've
Riley.
seen, this should. All right, Bob Riley in his swan song. We're going to have an ethics session.
Yeah, at the eve before Bentley is sworn in.
And the new Speaker of the House, Mike Hubbard, is going to preside over this. These are laws that they put in the handshake with Alabama that we're going to make these ethics laws stricter, and by God, we're going to not be like the Democrats.
And unfortunately, those two are the ones who have broken the law. So now that they've broken the laws, just as another de facto to make time go by a little bit slower, they're now saying they're unconstitutional because they got caught under doing something wrong.
Barron, what this is going to do is just going to not mean anything except stretch out when the trial starts.
Yeah, I predicted from the beginning the trial would go in January 2016. This was when he was indicted in October of 14. Everyone thought I was crazy. I thought that was still a pretty, fast track, but it looks like I will be either right or wrong because I chose too early. Now, this is like a bank robber trying to make the laws against bank robbery unconstitutional. Just because you've been indicted under a law does not mean it's a bad law. It means you're a bad person.
Well, it just a lot of people were just dumbfounded that he would come out. You know, in his book, Storming the State House, he talks about how this
Stealing the State House?
Yeah, stealing the State House. This was their signature thing. This was the first thing they did to show the people of Alabama that it was a new day. They had these new ethics
And
laws.
they gave the legislation to Brian Taylor. He was a new boy, but he was in very good with Governor Riley and Mike Hubbard. I don't think Brian went out and drafted a bunch of unconstitutional laws. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
Brian's
he's a lawyer.
smart.
He's a smart guy.
He's a smart
I mean,
guy. And this is just
it's
ludicrous.
hypocrisy. I mean, it's totally egregious. But like, I agree with you, Barron. It's just a delay tactic for this trial.
Well, you read the email from Mike Hubbard to Bob Riley, pass these new ethics laws. What were we thinking?
Yeah, because he wanted to make some more money.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know, other than delaying this thing, the judge, however, he's going to rule against it, I think, and then it's going to go to the Supreme Court of Alabama, so it's just going to eat up time, and they hope that they eat up time, something else will change. That's really it.
Right, and in 6 years, nobody has questioned the constitutionality of this ethics law.
Exactly.
Zero
Well,
elected
Mike
official.
Hubbard's strategy from the beginning is to deny, distract, and delay. That's what we see. We're going to have to leave it right there. Well, it's great to have everybody back together this Sunday. You've been watching The V. You can catch news stories every day on alreporter.com. Catch us on Facebook and YouTube. And, of course, every Sunday on your television stations throughout the state. Have a great weekend.